The story of the game, Jackson Smith and Jigba. JSN has his best game as a pro, unless we see something absolutely wild on Sunday night, and Justin Jefferson's playing, so never say never, or Monday evening, then JSN is going to be your wide receiver one overall in the week. And this is the first time JSN has done that as a pro. Massive. No DK Metcalf, no problem. JSN goes nuts. Exactly the sort of game that Seattle was envisioning when they selected him in the first round of the 2023 draft. And for dynasty managers, this is what you've been waiting for. A JSN smash week. 7 catches, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Multiple big plays downfield. This was not just JSN getting a ton of receptions like we saw earlier in the year. We had a 20-plus point performance in PPR where JSN had a ton of targets, a ton of catches. This was explosive plays.
What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
The top 12 fantasy football reactions you need to know from Week 9's games. This was a really fun week and a wild one. We've got everything you need to know fantasy football-wise, giving you all the insights you need every single week right here at Fantasy Points. Let's start out with Thursday night. Thursday night, the story has to be Garrett Wilson. And Garrett Wilson, the final stat line, could have been the story all in itself. 9 catches, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The Jets go and get that huge win over the Houston Texans in prime time, keep themselves alive for the season. But the story was Garrett Wilson's catch, 26-yard touchdown catch. And if you didn't see it, this was the catch of the season. It made you think of old Odell Beckham, one-handed grab. You start trying to have to measure out the best catches of all time to try to quantify that. Garrett Wilson absolutely playing well. Devontae Adams scored as well. These two are coexisting, at least on Thursday night. Let's see the way this season goes, but a huge win for the Jets. We got to talk about another wide receiver, Zay Flowers, and it's really been a top 2 in Baltimore for a lot of the season. The dynamic duo of Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, and we'll talk about them a little bit later, but the Baltimore Ravens annihilate the Denver Broncos. Broncos in the AFC playoff picture, one of the best defenses in football, and Baltimore hangs 41 on them. Zay Flowers goes absolutely nuts. Second-year wide receiver really coming on. We saw it in the second half of last season when Flowers stepped his game up under Todd Monken when you had multiple players injured in Baltimore like Mark Andrews. This season, it's been more of the same. But what's really telling is Zay Flowers' play of late. 4 games in his last 5 with 111-plus receiving yards. This past game against Denver, ridiculous. 5 catches, 127 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And one of the touchdowns was absolutely filthy. Ending the first half, Zay Flowers catches a ball in the middle, cuts to the right sideline, looks like he's going to cut out of bounds, and instead takes it all the way to the house. It was next-level thinking by Zay Flowers and next-level explosion. Tremendous play out of him. And let's stay in Baltimore because history is being made before our eyes. We are now going to be entering Week 10, and the QB1 overall and the RB1 overall will be on the same team. Lamar Jackson, QB4 on the week. Derrick Henry, running back 5. Both of these players did enough to keep themselves on top of the scoring column. So you have a QB1 overall and an RB1 overall on the same team. This does not happen in fantasy football. Last year, we saw Christian McCaffrey finish as RB1 and Brock Purdy finished as the QB6. You've got to go all the way back to 2013 where Peyton Manning finishes the QB1 and Noshawn Marino finishes as the RB4 to find this sort of teammate pairing atop the QB and the RB spots. Truly remarkable. It'll be interesting to see if they can hold on to it. But even if they don't hold on to it, this has been a special pairing. And when you combine Zay Flowers with the big 2, there's a lot more scoring to come in Baltimore. The Ravens' second half of the year is going to be a lot of fun for fantasy managers. And let's stay at the running back position. We got to talk about another older veteran running back who just went absolutely nuts today. Saquon Barkley. You have Doug Peterson against his former team that he won a Super Bowl with. Doug Peterson goes up against the Philadelphia Eagles. Philly got off to a really big start, and the game became a little tighter than you want to see. But the story of the week fantasy football-wise was Saquon Barkley. Jalen Hurts, of course, puts up another huge scoring number. Might be QB1 when the week is over. But we got to talk about Saquon. Saquon pulled off a reverse hurdle. It was probably the only time you're ever going to see this in fantasy. Then you combine that with Saquon with 159 rushing yards. That's the second most he's had all season long. He also had the most rush attempts. And if that's not enough, he gets you a second touchdown as a receiver, gets you 40 receiving yards. That's his season high. Saquon is absolutely locked in. This has been nothing but tremendous fantasy performance after fantasy performance from Saquon all season long. Henry and Saquon, both as free agent signings. This is the year of the free agent running back. That's really the narrative when it comes down to it. When we look back on this season, the impact that free agent running backs had on fantasy football was massive. And we talked about a lot of sort of positive things today, but we got to talk about some negative stuff because every time seems like the wide receiver position is getting healthier, disaster strikes. Last week, we got back Cooper Kupp. Last week, we got back Puka Nacua. And then this week, just carnage. CeeDee Lamb left the game with what looks to be a serious shoulder injury. I don't have all the information, and nobody does because we're waiting on an MRI. This could be an ugly one. Shoulder injuries can be serious. This one is awful. If you're a CeeDee Lamb manager, you are on the edge of your seat. And I have a team with CeeDee Lamb and A.J. Brown, a big-time dynasty team that is suddenly in a lot of trouble because A.J. Brown had a knee injury, and we don't know the extent of this one. Brown walked off to the locker room. It wasn't like he was put on the cart, but A.J. Brown has a knee injury of some sort. We want to find out what's going on with that. Hopefully we have more information. Make sure you're listening to all the podcasts and all the YouTube content right over here on Fantasy Points and find out what's going on with AJ early in the week. But knee injury for AJ. Then you add in Drake London with a hip injury. Drake London catches a touchdown early in the game, and now we have a hip injury with Drake London. So we need more information on all three players. Lamb sounds like the most serious one to me, but all three of them could end up being serious. All three of these wide receivers are players that we were counting on. All three of these players would be ranked as wide receiver ones if they were healthy heading into week 10, heading into week 11. This is catastrophe potentially for fantasy managers of these players. And let's get back to something positive before this turns into like a sad show. Devon Achane. Devon Achane is that guy. He is the second half of the year league winner. 32.1 points. Unbelievable. And Achane has just been unbelievable the last 2 weeks, playing ridiculous football since Tua Tagovailoa came back. We haven't seen it with Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's been like there. He's not invisible like he was when Tua was gone, but it's been all about Devon Achane. He is the Miami focal point on offense. 30% target share today. The third most receptions among all running backs. Achane has 37 receptions this year. Unbelievable. He has more receptions than Breece Hall, and he's played one fewer game and been targeted 8 fewer times. So Breece Hall had more receptions than any running back last year, and Devon Achane now has more catches than he does this year. And it's been over the last 2 weeks, he's had 70% route participation. I mean, this is all you can ask for with Achane. And it's back-to-back weeks with 8 targets. 8 targets in back-to-back weeks is just ridiculous. So Achane to the moon. If you have Devon Achane, be excited. This is your second half of the year league winner. Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and Devon Achane, go along with Bijan and a couple other guys. But one of these running backs is going to affect leagues. And Achane, he's got the juice because he's got the receiving work every single week. And we love running back receptions. The RB1 overall over the last 11 seasons has averaged over 79 receptions a season. So we love that when we're looking for explosive league-winning performances. Now, the Rams and the Seahawks just played an awesome one. End of the game, Matt Stafford connects with Demarcus Robinson, throws an absolute dart. Demarcus Robinson catches a beautiful, like kind of a one-handed catch over his shoulder, an absolutely perfect play. But the story of the game, Jackson Smith and Jigba. JSN has his best game as a pro, unless we see something absolutely wild on Sunday night and Justin Jefferson's playing. So never say never. Or Monday evening, then JSN is going to be your wide receiver 1 overall in the week. And this is the first time JSN has done that as a pro. Massive. No DK Metcalf, no problem. JSN goes nuts. Exactly the sort of game that Seattle was envisioning when they selected him in the first round of the 2023 draft. And for dynasty managers, this is what you've been waiting for. A JSN smash week. 7 catches, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Multiple big plays downfield. This was not just JSN getting a ton of receptions like we saw earlier in the year. We had a 20-plus point performance in PPR where JSN had a ton of targets, a ton of catches. This was explosive plays. JSN showed his versatility. Seattle loses the game, but fantasy managers absolutely win with JSN. And we'll stay at the wide receiver position. And we talked about Zay Flowers. We mentioned Puka Nacua, and we talked about JSN. So we're talking about second-year wide receivers. And one that's been really, really coming on, Cedric Tillman. And we got to say, Cedric Tillman's for real. This was another strong performance in a row. 3 straight games with Tillman performing well. 6 catches, 75 yards, and a touchdown on 11 targets. And this has just been par for the course. Cedric Tillman has been giving you high-end wide receiver 1 production without Amari Cooper. The Browns were absolutely exposed today. The Chargers controlled the game from start to finish. But Tillman was the one constant that we can lean on. 22.2 points per game without Amari Cooper over the last 3 weeks. He's had a 24% target share and 35% air yards. Next week, Cedric Tillman should be ranked as a wide receiver 2. And if you have people in your league who think they're selling high, believe the usage. Tillman could be here for the rest of the season. Cedric Tillman could be one of the waiver wire ads of the year. And we'll stay with value wide receivers. This is really, we're talking a lot of wideouts today. And the reason is we've got to talk about it because there was so many impactful performances. And we've got to talk about another buy low candidate for you. Not really a buy low, it's really a buy high. But if Drake London is going to be significantly injured, or if he's just going to miss a couple of games, Darnell Mooney is the one you want to get. Mooney scored his 5th touchdown of the year. This is the most touchdown receptions we've ever seen from Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney leads the NFL in catches over 20 yards. This is a player who is right now should be ranked as a wide receiver 1 if Drake London is going to miss time. So Darnell Mooney right now gave you another big week, 5 catches, 88 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets. And when we talk about Mooney for the season, there's been several games like this. We had a very slow week 6 and 7, but you had the 30-pointer against Carolina. You had an 18-pointer last week and a near 20-pointer this week. If Drake London misses, Darnell Mooney is the one you want. So I would kick the tires on a Darnell Mooney trade, and we're going to keep an eye on him as a potential contingent upside play at the wide receiver position that can really, really help you during the second half of the season. And let's pour one out because we've got to point out a streak that ended today. Kyren Williams goes and gets 0 touchdowns. He had a down game. Volume was there. He had a 1 catch for 26 yards. Rushing wise, very low yards per carry, but he had 22 rush attempts. but Kyren Williams fails to find the end zone. And why are we talking about a guy not scoring today? Because this ended a 10-game touchdown streak for Kyren Williams. An unbelievable streak for Kyren. This was like a historically good streak when you start talking about consistency at the running back position. We're going to look for Kyren Williams to start a brand new streak next week. But what a run if you have Kyren Williams on your fantasy team. This is the first week since almost a year ago in terms of days when you're talking about Kyren Williams not scoring a touchdown. Just massive for him to go on this long of a streak. Let's go over the tight end position because we have a sleeper tight end that is going to be a very hot waiver wire addition if he's still available in your league this week. And Mike Gesicki was available in about 85% of Yahoo formats this morning on Sunday morning. And Gesicki last week had a very strong week. And this week, even better, scores 27 points. One of the highest scores we've seen at the tight end position for the entire season. Gesicki gets you a 27-pointer, 5 catches, 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So over the last 2 weeks, 12 catches, 173 yards. That's big time. And earlier in the year, we saw another very strong performance for Gesicki. And what do all these games have in common? No Tee Higgins. When Tee Higgins misses, they use Mike Gesicki. Today, we also saw Eric All get banged up. So Gesicki has the tight end position pretty much to himself, and he sees the elevated usage when Tee Higgins misses. Mike Gesicki is one you want to add this week if he's available on your waiver wire. And let's talk about a player who is really, it's been sort of disappointing. Malik Nabers was a guy who was leading all wide receivers in production. And then we saw the concussion. We saw him fail to come back after the concussion. And now it's sort of been the fears we had in the preseason about how the Giants offense could hold Malik Nabers back. And we've really seen it the last 3 weeks. So Malik Nabers comes back, misses week 5, misses week 6. And after giving us 3 straight weeks with 23 plus PPR points, Malik Nabers has failed to score 15 in 3 straight weeks. He had 14.9 this week, so I'm splitting hairs a little bit. But this is not the sort of production that we wanted to see from Malik Nabers at this time of the year. Early in the year, he gave us multiple 28-point weeks, a 23-point week, and then it's just been this sort of low-end wide receiver 2 production in weeks 8 and weeks 9. We want to see Malik Nabers turn that around as the season moves along, but he's going to be handcuffed by the quality of the quarterback play in New York. New York loses another game. This is a rough one for Malik Nabers managers who expected so much more from this incredibly talented rookie that's being held back by the quality of his offense. I'm Theo Gremminger. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure you're subscribed to Fantasy Points YouTube. We're going to be dropping videos like this all week long. And make sure you're tuned in for School of Scott, Scott Barrett and I breaking down what to expect in week 10 and the biggest takeaways from week 9 later on the week. You can check that out right here on Fantasy Points YouTube or subscribe to the podcast. We will see you soon.